Hello, welcome and happy new year to the first episode of 2025 of Search with Candour. I am your host, as always, Jack Chambers Ward, and I'm joined by the one and only Jamie Indigo this week. Somebody both Mark and I have been wanting on the show for a very, very long time. Jamie is utterly brilliant when it comes to technical SEO, and we'll be breaking down so much of Jamie's contribution to the SEO chapter of the Web Almanac from the end of 2024. What Jamie and their team did throughout the Web Almanac has been fascinating, and it's a really, really great conversation. We dig into a lot of the technical data and how much that has changed over the last couple of years, and plenty of teasers and links and all that kind of stuff to what we can expect from the future and the rest of the chapters. Because the Web Almanac isn't just the SEO side of things. There's loads of other stuff as well. So I will put a link in the show notes so you can go and check that out. And of course, stay tuned for more details in my conversation with Jamie Indigo before we have a word from our sponsors. A huge thank you to SE Ranking for sponsoring this week's episode of Search with Candour. SE Ranking is the company behind the powerful and intuitive SEO platform trusted by millions of agencies, businesses, and SEO professionals since 2013. With a robust toolkit, SE Ranking empowers SEO professionals around the world to excel at executing their strategies. Key features include the rank tracker, which provides accurate and up-to-date keyword rankings, as well as the competitive and keyword research tools that offer deep insights into market trends and competitor strategies. The platform's AI-powered SEO insights leverage advanced machine learning to deliver actionable recommendations, streamlining the process and letting you outrank your competition. The backlink checker and monitoring tool enables you to analyze backlink profiles and monitor their status, ensuring you've got a very healthy link building strategy. SE Ranking have launched their AI Overviews tracking feature. It's a brand new tool that allows you to track AI search engine snippet that will help you see how you stack up against your competitors in Google's AI enhanced search features. The tool supports you in identifying your rivals in the snippets, analyzing their content, and detecting new opportunities for strategic decisions. Click the link in the video description down below or in the show notes if you're listening to this episode. And a huge thank you to SE Ranking for sponsoring us here at Search with Candour. My guest this week has spoken at conferences around the world, is the author of the Rich Snippets newsletter, which is probably my favourite newsletter, just putting that out there, and has been published in basically every SEO publication you can think of. They are a delightful blend of tech-savvy wit and whimsical charm, and if this podcast were a forest, they would probably be the mischievous tabaxi rogue hiding behind trees, tossing out snarky comments like magical stones. Welcome to the show, finally, the feral cat whispering code sorceress, Jamie Indigo.
Hello, my friend. It's so good to see you again.
You too. I know we were literally just saying, and I feel like we've had this conversation a couple of times now, how have you not been on the podcast already? It's a crime against Search with Candour that you've not been here before. Both Mark and I were like, surely Jamie's been on before. Surely. We both know, Jamie, what awesome work you've been doing in tech SEO for years and years now. Thank God you're finally here. That's all I can say.
I think someone just had like a blue shirt in the background, like some laundry throwing. You're like, oh, that's Jamie.
The signature blue blur just occurring in the background. Exactly. One thing I didn't mention in your intro there is that you are obviously part of the research and author team for the Web Almanac and the SEO chapter, which is what we're going to be diving into today. And it is pretty damn juicy. I think you described it as delicious, and I think I agree with you, because there's some real interesting tech SEO stuff. I know there is a lot to get into, and you did a brilliant little summary on Search Engine Land, like top 5 takeaways a few weeks ago as well. And this is also the first episode of 2025. So Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year, Jamie. I know it's in 2024 when we're recording this. It feels a bit weird saying that, but I think it's just a pretty cool way to kick things off.
The New Year's baby is out. We're bringing in the big crone energy for 2025. Let's do this.
Hell yeah. Exactly. So I guess let's kick things off with, for the listeners, for the viewers that don't know, what is the Web Almanac and how do we get into this SEO chapter of the Web Almanac as well?
Absolutely. So let me just start with, hey, our lives are mostly digital. Like without an email address. You can't sign up to pay your bills. You can't do anything else. Like, we rely on digital to be a core element of our life, especially post-COVID. The thing is, we don't really study that. Like, we exist here, but no one really measures it except for the Web Almanac. So the HTTP Archive is a fantastic nonprofit, and you can go in there, you can take a snapshot of a page, you can look back in time and see how things have changed on a page. They also do this thing where they go ahead and crawl 17 million pages, and then a bunch of fairly ambitious nerds like myself go ahead and take all of that data and go, hey, what can we learn? So this is about studying SEO at scale. It's my third year participating in it, and second year authoring, first time lead.
That's proper progression right there, mate. Like research, author, lead. Like that's the goal right there. And I love the whole just idea, like you said, actually having a look at how the web works and what it does, because I think we take a lot of this stuff for granted, right? I think we're kind of aware of bits and pieces, especially working in SEO and yourself working in technical SEO. We're kind of aware of how bits and pieces work, but actually getting into the nitty gritty and into the details of how it all works, I think is really, really cool, and kind of the whole point of detailing all this information. I think it's a really interesting way of kind of taking a step back, but also, like you said, what, 70 million pages? That's absolutely crazy. Getting into millions and millions of pages. And I know
17.
Yes, 17.
Still
yeah,
a ton.
Yeah.
And this year we actually did home pages and inner pages. So previously, every year just on a home page. And home pages, what I've learned and looking at the data, working on the page break chapter as well, they behave differently. So it's really good to get that dimension added to it.
Yeah, I think that I found that particularly interesting, that inner page side of things, because when I'm in much smaller scales, when we're talking about tech audits and stuff, right, you think about templates, right? You don't necessarily have to crawl every single individual page to get an idea of how the site is functioning, but getting an idea of not just home pages, because I feel like, I don't know if you necessarily agree with this, I feel like you kind of do, where the homepage is often an outlier in the general kind of space of the rest of the site. It'll be one kind of thing.
Homepages tend to have less styles. They have
yeah,
less weight to them. We build for the homepage and then start adding bubbles and trinkets on for everything else, and they get real chunky as we go.
So getting into the inner pages, that seems like a big step and like a pretty crucial step for getting a better idea of how sites are working on scale, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that for me, when that comes to, I was thinking like how e-commerce site works, how publishing sites work, how different each type of kind of page and different site can be. That makes a huge difference when it comes to just, I feel like I kind of often glance at a homepage before I actually find the stuff I want to find out. I don't know, that's very true for, like you're saying, a lot of the way we kind of build sites. You kind of start with
no one's ever
basics.
seen a Stack Overflow homepage. I'm just saying.
That's a really good example. Exactly. So I guess, what's the kind of like methodology for you and the team going in with nearly 17 million pages, home pages, inner pages, all that kind of stuff? How do you even deal with that much data? What's the kind of process?
All right, so it's 83 terabytes of data. It's a lot.
That's a lot.
And unfortunately, when you put a whole team of SEOs together, we tend to have a lot of good intentions and curiosity. We were late on our deadline this year for that reason. The great news is it's also established. We are several years into having Web Almanac. So you go through and you look at last year, because what you want to do is provide consistency. We studied it last year. How did it change this year? And keep moving on. And of course, you can add new things. This was the first year we ever studied Robots.txt directives. First year we ever got to go ahead and slice and dice and go, home pages act like this, inner pages act like this. And that added, every set you've got inner and home now. So you're essentially doubling how much you're looking at, which we did not necessarily anticipate right away. But again, that curiosity, once we saw what it unlocked, was like, oh, but I'm gonna go poke this a little bit more.
I can imagine going down that rabbit hole very quickly, right?
Oh, it is a beautiful rabbit hole, my friend. So it all kicks off in GitHub. The Web Almanac is an open repo in GitHub. They put up a call saying, hey, we're doing this year's edition. Here are open issues. Every issue it ends up usually being a chapter. So you've got things like JavaScript, CSS, page weight, SEO. People go in, they comment on the issue, say, hey, I would like to be this role, this role. There's multiple roles in every chapter. Authors, of course, most prominent ones. It is a lot. If you are brand new and you're thinking about authorship, take a peek at a good first chapter. I believe there's a tag in there to take a look. Some chapters are very straightforward. SEO doesn't tend to be that way. So keep that in mind. If it sounds like too much, you're probably right. But also, you could be a reviewer. That means you're a subject matter expert who goes in after the authors have absolutely gone cross-eyed staring at things and goes, hey, this doesn't make sense. Hey, can we recheck this? You provide that really needed, helpful outside perspective. I mean, I'm sure you've been so deep into a project that when you come out and try and talk to people again, you sound a little bit weird. Yeah. You'd see me after a 4-day crawl analysis, just no social skills. But it starts with the team getting together and we go through, we figure out what queries we need to pull. We have to have the queries pulled first. That means we figure out we want this dimension, we want this metric. This year we added a lot of custom metrics, which was fantastic. So we had a whole new dimension of home versus inner page. We had custom metrics checking for different things. We use Lighthouse on a number of them. We run the data. When you run the data, the authors want to get in there and work with the analyst to build the charts, and then we can start writing. Inevitably, something goes wrong. Like a chart is slightly off. You're like, I'm expecting to see a CLS of, a max of 10, and this says 113. We double check that. These things happen. It's okay, but it's a constantly moving project. We have a Slack channel. Everybody hops in. You try and schedule your regular meetings to go through, try and keep on a timeline. Rarely does timeline work, if I'm honest, and that's okay. It's volunteer researchers. We're all humans, and you don't have to be perfect to be part of it. We get to the end. We have reviewers hop in again. We have our editors go through and go, did you forget how words work? And you go, yes, I did. They fix them very kindly for you. Once it's published, the translating teams come in. So if you are bilingual, this is a great opportunity to help. You are a technical writer, taking the content and putting it into Portuguese, putting it into Spanish, Japanese. As an author, it's incredible to see that content distributed that way, but more meaningfully, it helps to create that equal access across the web. Most internet content is in English, despite the fact that most people, they may speak English, the second language, but it's misproportioned. There's more English content than there are English speakers. So to have research like this available is really useful.
That's really cool. I think I know Amanda King said it late last year when we were thinking about English is not the language of the web. Code is kind of the language of the web. Mm-hmm. Really, and like you said, as much as we kind of feel very privileged as native English speakers, being very Anglo-centric and English language centric in many ways, getting outside of that, and that is so cool that you guys are able to bring it into different languages, translate it, and make it available in so many different ways. Because I think, again, this is kind of the stuff, as we just said, that people aren't really paying attention to unless you guys go in and dig around and do the work, right? There's a lot of stuff that is always kind of bubbling around under the surface. And I love the way you do that kind of year-on-year comparison of like, actually, this year it looked pretty bad. Now it's looking much better. Or the other way around, when stuff goes wrong, we see kind of widespread changes. I know there's been a lot of looking at those robots.
I've been
things,
so
right?
excited for the death of dynamic rendering. I
think it is on the decline, right? That was my interpretation from what you guys were writing about.
Yeah, we use the very header as a code marker to tell whether or not a page was using dynamic rendering. So very header goes ahead and looks at the user agent, serves different content based on that. So we skipped last year. So 2022, we had about 12 and 13% between desktop and mobile for dynamic rendering, and it's down to like 1%, which again, dynamic rendering is a temporary workaround. It is twice the code and half the visibility. Let me love you, please.
If that's not the clip for socials, I don't know what is, Jamie. You nailed it already.
Deep and passionate plea.
Exactly. And like Google have been telling us not to use dynamic rendering for long-term processes for a while now, right? So it seems like people are finally catching on, and maybe that's like I don't know, maybe that's like new devs coming in and learning the right way from scratch rather than being stuck in the old-fashioned ways. Maybe that's me being optimistic. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's a chain event. The focus on performance and making your site actually usable for humans did have a lot of teams go, hey, maybe we should refresh this from our .NET and move on to something new. We've been on Angular 1 for a while.
I was literally having this conversation with the team the other day. We had a new client pitch to us, and we opened the website and we're like, oh, this was built in 1997, I think. Like, there is a full, like, almost flashed out animation above the header. It's like,
are you working on the Space Jam site?
It felt like it, honestly, mate. It felt like it sometimes. And I know there was this is a whole tangent. There was an example of, I think it was like a caravan site directory or something, so like a holiday site here in the UK where you can go and pitch your tents and kind of do that kind of thing. And it was literally born like 30 years ago, seemingly out of nowhere, and ranks incredibly well, even though it seems to have not been updated almost since I've been alive somehow. It's
probably very
bizarre.
Lightweight too.
Exactly, right?
HTML and images, that's it.
Anyway, let's not talk about sites from 1997 anymore. But I know, as well as dynamic rendering, you guys, you touched on robots there, right? I think that was a big part of a lot of what's going on. And I know there's been a lot of chat about all the new crawlers that are being launched and how Robots.txt is reacting to that. And we're seeing big publishers block a lot of AI bots and all this kind of chaos that seems to be happening. So there seem to be some positive changes for robots in general, though, right? Am I being too optimistic now?
We're seeing more parity between mobile and desktop. We're seeing more to-end response codes. Yeah, people are realizing the importance of the Robots.txt. We're obviously seeing more named AI crawlers in there, which, look, I made a silly choice. I was like, oh, I'm a humanist. I should go into tech. Some idea. But here we are. I personally don't believe that your existence on the internet is a tacit agreement to go ahead and train any model. All of these were built before there was a way to control what content they were allowed to interact with. We've got the Internet Architecture Board having their hackathon in Dublin, talking about new ways to control them. We've got Cloudflare going, actually, we can enforce that for you. We can take your Robots.txt, and when we see them crawling that, we'll shut it down. So there's more and more pushback to that. And I am for it. We should be allowed to exist on the internet. We should be allowed to hold space for rough drafts as we talk to each other without it all being consumed and spewed out by something a CEO thinks can replace half the workforce.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we're seeing. I know we've covered it in the podcast. We've covered it in core updates a couple of times. I know you've talked about it in rich snippets as well. The fact that some of these big publishers are kind of grouping together and trying to sue a lot of the AI companies and LLMs that are just kind of, like you said, taking their content without permission and without licensing agreements, and how does this all work in terms of original content and crediting and all this kind of stuff, and monetization obviously being a huge part of the publishing industry and how that's been shifting. I think it
hurt me when this all came out, because like this Web Almanac, all of this work that we pour into, this is an open source data set. This is available for anyone, and they used it. We never consented to that. Yeah. All of the Creative Commons crawl, the fourth point under terms of service is IP is retained by the individual creators. Their fundamental creation is a violation of the terms of service. Humanists, rabble, rouse. Hire good writers, please.
That would be nice, right? I think that's, again, not to go off on a whole huge anti-corporate tangent, but it's gonna be the fight we're gonna see over the next few years. I think that's gonna be, as much as we saw the shift from print to digital 10, 15, 20 years ago, we're now seeing that pushback from trying to bring in human writers. Actually, the whole discussion we have around like EEAT, right? Like, oh, prove that you have first-hand experience and expertise and all this kind of stuff. Just chuck it out with an LLM, it'll be fine. And then here we are with a whole entire sites that claim to be news just churning out crap that doesn't exist.
If you're interested in this conversation and the potential impact that we have at the rapidly expanding growth of content on the web, like more content was created in 2023 than was created, I think, from 2012 to 2018 combined. There is a researcher named Maggie Appleton who has a fantastic talk called The Dark Forest. It's about generative AI, its impact. She looks at how humans will move and navigate in scenarios where it is overpopulated by AI content. It's a really worthwhile piece to look at from both the humanist perspective, looking at how technology is going to move, but also in figuring out what your strategy will be when the open web is so over-dominated by AI generative content that humans don't use anymore. Because humans are not going to stop searching. We're built to ask questions. We're very curious creatures.
Absolutely. Yeah. I will definitely put a link to that in the show notes. So listeners and viewers, you can go and check out Maggie's talk. That is, something I feel like I'm very conscious. Maybe again that I'm reading too much sci-fi and worrying about the Dark Forest in general.
Look, I do what I say on the tin, 100% human. Always promise to be this way. Don't be surprised.
Well, speaking more of robots, I know you mentioned for the first time you looked at meta robots, robots directives, right? What was that kind of initial step towards it? That seems like a pretty detailed and tricky process from my understanding.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. So you get this brand new chunk of like things that have been covered before. You have a little bit of a structure to follow, but then you get this whole new glorious chunk of data, and you're like, wait, how do I slice and dice this? How do I look at this? And there's 24 different valid directives you can give in a robots, plus you can name bots individually. You can have multiple robots meta tags. You can name Bing bot, Googlebot News, generic robots. There's a whole bunch of them. But when it comes to sitting them, it becomes real tricky because that's a lot of things to try and slice and dice simultaneously. What we found delighted me. So I looked first at what was the most prominently declared rules. Turns out those are follow and index. Fun fact, those are not real rules.
Yeah. I love you often hear the like, oh, I need a do follow link or a follow link or whatever. Like that's a common thing you hear in link buildy spam stuff. And I've very much got into the habit of like, that doesn't exist. Oh, God.
Like, oh, do you not know any better? Is there an adult I can talk to?
Yeah. I feel like you could get away with saying that, mate. Maybe not me. You're definitely the adult.
Thin line between delight and snark. I don't know. It works for me. We're here. But these rules are malarkey. Like, what do we have? So when I looked at them, found that 56% of desktop sites were using the follow rule. That was the most prevalent one. And again, that's not a real rule, which was pretty fantastic to see. Like, okay, I wonder how much time people are spending asking their devs to go ahead and add follow onto them.
I've seen that definitely like just as a default in some CMSs as well. So maybe that's just like a pull through automatically kind of thing. I don't know.
It could very well be. I saw with images, particularly, it seems like CMSs were going ahead and adopting alt tags by default now. So there was a lot more alt tags, but there were more blank alt tags.
Right.
Fewer without them. Well, the great thing about the robots, though, is when you begin to look at by name and by directive, how varied they were. So no archive means nothing to most. If that generic robots rule, like 1% of pages when I hadn't said no archive. But what is it? 36%? I don't want to say this. Yeah, 36% said Bing bot, no archive. And the reason they're doing that is because that's how you keep the page content out of Bing chat. So SEOs are going through and they're curating these directives. They're explicitly saying, hey, Googlebot News, we want you to no snippet this. We want you to no index this, but regular Googlebot is fine. It's very interesting. I love to see that SEOs are using those technical levers to go ahead and curate, especially since we had the Robots.txt and exclusion protocols become official with the internet standards. So we now have a really good grasp and understanding Robots.txt controlling crawling, but robots directives, that's how we control our indexing. It really seems like the community's embraced that.
Yeah,
know your levers, kids.
Definitely. I think, like you said, there's definitely been I don't necessarily like an increase in awareness of, like you said, the difference between Robots.txt and the robots directive side of things. Hopefully this is a better place for us as a whole, as an industry, as a, again, getting very big picture, as a society, as a culture, as a civilization, all that kind of stuff. But I think we're moving in the right direction where people, as we just said, want to have more control over this stuff. That's probably why they're doing the follow and indexy stuff. Right? Like, yeah, please follow me, please index this. Like, you know, it's that the optimistic side of things, when really you should be thinking about how to control it and how to understand what is being crawled and what is being indexed from your content. I think that seems to be a nice positive step in the right direction from my side of things. I think like being aware of what is being crawled and indexed by whom and when, looking at your log files and stuff like that, and having an idea of who is poking around and doing what is a better way to understand where your content is being featured across the web, right?
More people know what SEO is. When I first started,
absolutely.
People were like, senior executive officer?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, we went from the ghosts in the machine to the reason people hate rusty websites. It's been an evolution.
I know somebody here at Candour, their partner, finally got around to asking them what they actually do for a job, and asked them what SEO stands for. And we're like, yes, let me explain SEO to you. It's like, you just hear it kind of in passing. It's like, oh yeah, that's SEO. SEO is like said very quickly. I don't know what
I hear
that
it
means.
mentioned in ads on podcasts. It's wild.
Exactly. I love that kind of like, when you're looking at this kind of insane amount of data. I know there was a particular stat that Mark and I pulled out for the Core Updates newsletter that was how many, I think it was invalid HTML in headers.
10.9
like
of mobile
insane.
pages. So like 1 in 10 pages out there is like, yeah, I'm just going to decapitate this head. NBD.
That's crazy to me. That seems so crazy. But again, I wonder if it's just people not paying attention, just not like...
Third-party tools, a lot of time they
absolutely.
like, oh, just put this in the head directly above the opening tag. It's just a div. Death by IMG.
Exactly. I think that kind of stuff, when it comes to poking around in the head and poking around in that kind of stuff, you kind of need to be aware of, again, almost in the micro scale rather than the macro scale, aware of who's doing what with your site, right? Like, oh yeah, one of the devs just did this, or we just let the SEO guy go wild who doesn't actually know what he's doing, or again, holding my hands up as the SEO guy, not the developer. Like, we are very guilty of just being like,
put a tag manager on there and they just fire whatever they want.
Yeah, just chuck the container and it'll be fine. Whatever. Like, yeah, don't need to worry about it. Tag manager solves all the problems, right? That's how that works.
Yes, they are just a blessing.
Aren't they just? And I know you guys talked about...
it's better than one tag manager, 12.
Oh, yeah.
12 in there.
Yeah, we had that with a client where the devs had copied tag manager from a site we had built to one of their sites. So suddenly our tag manager was firing on a site we didn't build because they had copied our container over, and it had 2 other containers in there as well. We assume one of theirs, one of ours, and somebody else's. And we were like, why is this going crazy? Why are we getting like 3, 4, 5 times? Why are all these triggers happening? What's going on? It's like, hold on a minute. What is this site?
I don't host names, kids.
Right? Exactly. We were freaking out trying to work out what was going on. It's like, where has this come from? Oh, hey, should we just send an email to this company and be like, hey, we noticed you just copied our code like word for word. Maybe don't do that next time.
If you're gonna steal, at least don't be sloppy, my guy.
Exactly. You got to be a tabaxi rogue about it, right? You got to pass your stealth check. You got to sleight hand that bless. Thing. Exactly. Something I absolutely love talking about, something I remember Ben talking about very early on in my career, like one of the first technical SEO things, that seems like a weird thing to say, is canonicals. And trying to explain what a canonical was to a client of mine 6-7 years ago at this point. You got some really interesting canonical stuff here as well. I think there's been, again, a positive shift, he says reluctantly, right?
It feels like it. Again, remember, we're studying at scale. So we're not in your individual site in the weeds, but what I can say is we have more parity that's consistent between mobile and desktop. And the thing about Canonical is if you're not consistent, then they're going to get ignored. Like sometimes the site tells me this is the preferred version, sometimes it doesn't. I'm gonna choose whatever I feel like. You know, Googlebot is spicy like that. So we saw more consistency between mobile and desktop. We still have some areas for improvement. There's 1% of sites out there who are like, I'll just throw it there in the dump. We're good. Just use some JavaScript, which again, JavaScript is not the devil, but it's also not the recommended way to go ahead and implement a canonical. When you think about it, just from a technical perspective, in order to get to that rendered canonical, we first have to look at the HTTP header. We have to download the initial HTML. We've got to build our DOM, everything out, use all the resources to go ahead and get that fully rendered page, and then be like, oh, I didn't actually want this. Boo. So it's not very resource effective. If you have that canonical in the initial HTML, very few sites have HTTP headers for it. If you have it in the initial HTML, you're at least saying, hey, before you go ahead and fetch the 70 pieces of code you need to build this page, it's the same as over yonder. You're reminding your crawl allocation, the way budget is used, resources are used, much better. If you're a small site, ignore me. I don't work with a lot of small sites. My sites tend to be billions of pages. Under 100,000, you're fine. You do you. Love you. Bye. We also had like 1 in 50 mobile pages that had a changed canonical between the initial HTML and the rendered. Again, it's a little bit dicey. It's the same idea as a no index. If you have a no index on that initial HTML, don't expect it to render the page and find an index. Be aware of the order of operations. Googlebot is code runs in order.
Yeah, I think that was one of the ones that I particularly caught Mark's eye. I was like, that is a lot. And again, like you said, because we're working at scale, I know I say this all the time when we're working with like, oh, Google says it's this particular percentage. Like, yeah, that's billions, if not trillions of pages. So any percentage of that is a big, big number. The same with what you guys are doing with this data set. 1% is still hundreds of thousands of pages. That is a huge deal.
Every parameter breeds like bunnies. Just saying, there's a lot of opportunity here for things to go real cattywampus.
Exactly. I think there's that. Again, thinking about I feel like I've mostly worked on smaller sites, kind of the opposite of you, Jamie. But there's that element of, like you said, just making one little shift and one little click in one wrong direction. We talked about Tag Manager. We talked about changing a little thing in the head. That can have massive catastrophic effect across small sites, let alone big sites, let alone 17 million sites. That's going to be a huge impact as a whole for what people are going to experience on those sites, right? It's going to make a big impact, even if it's just a small percentage.
That turns into an avalanche.
Exactly.
It really can
exactly.
be.
Yeah,
definitely. And the technical signals require consistency. Like Googlebot is very clever. It gets into all the nooks and crannies, but it's also very dumb. You need to be consistent with it to have these things be effective.
Yeah, exactly. Consistency, funnily enough, has definitely been kind of like a recurring theme throughout the podcast, whether that comes to content creation, whether that comes to, again, auditing, whether that comes to technical stuff, that being consistent and being aware of the kind of things you are doing on a regular basis can make a huge, huge difference, rather than just kind of like, oh, I'll try it once and see what happens.
It's not does it break, it's how does it break.
There you go. Exactly. And there was, I know there's a lot of, when it comes to that kind of, the rendered HTML with the canonical side of things, again, we had Martin Split talking about JavaScript and how most of the problems you think are JavaScript are probably not JavaScript. He did a talk for us at Search Knowledge a few months ago, and
shock.
I know, right? It was like, I think he quoted like 99 out of 100 problems that arrive on his desk are not JavaScript problems. It's like, yeah, a lot of people, like you said, leap to that conclusion and think like, it's probably the devil there.
Is it JavaScript or is it a terrible page? Because it's a terrible. If that script only gives me more malarkey, why would I bother?
Exactly. And I think people are very quick to like point the finger and be like, it's probably I don't understand it. It's probably JavaScript. It's like, well, maybe you should actually pay attention to what's going on in your HTML then.
Is it JavaScript, or do you have an A/B testing platform in place that broke your rendering?
That's the one.
Maybe, possibly.
I know you mentioned the structured data side of things as well. There was a real nice bit of structured data you guys dug into. I love the sheer scale of it, all the kind of structured data stuff that I find so interesting, because it's something we've talked about more and more with our clients, and I know people
it's
are trying.
It's a great cheat sheet. Why not use it?
Exactly, yeah. I had David Jada on the show early last year, even over a year ago or so, and he described it as spoon feeding Google the data that you want it to have, and I was like, you nailed it, Dave. Like, absolutely.
Also, the more chaotic the world, the more I love writing really beautiful nested JSON LD. It's just very cathartic. Like, nothing makes sense, but this does.
Exactly. It's a little sanctuary of order,
logic,
and
reason.
normal. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you need a bit of extra logic in our lives in 2025, to say the least. But I guess the for the structured data side
start
of things,
handing out pamphlets about logical syllogisms. Have
Seriously.
you heard the good word of logic fallacies?
Exactly. Again, coming to that homepage versus inner page stuff you guys are talking about in the Almanac, I always find that you kind of think about structured data and you get a lot of like the organizational, that kind of stuff on the homepage, but when you get to the inner page stuff, that's where it gets to the real kind of detail bits and pieces, right? You get to product stuff, you get to authorship stuff, you get to all the cool things that you can do with that. Do you think there is that kind of higher adoption right now? More people are using it in the right way and moving in the right direction again when it comes to JavaScript?
Again, we get the large scale meta. So I can tell you, hey, look, JSON LD is being adopted more. Fantastic. That is the preferred version. We still got a little pinch of RDFA in there. Someone probably forgot to clean up their .NET site. Website is still like the predominant markup, which is the most generic. Yes, the bot is aware that this is a website. I don't know how you knew that. Search action, we see that one a ton. Web page, again, not very specific. So we have all these great opportunities of going ahead and describing what is on the page. Like, yes, it is a web page. Thank you. Very, very much aware of that. Can you tell me more? So I work in automotive. It's a great opportunity to talk about the vehicle, bring in information about the ratings and everything else we have in place. Let's go ahead and include some authorship for whomever wrote, the detailed review of this. Really wonderful opportunities to nest these pieces together. And again, I encourage you to nest. Do not put multiple instances. Write one beautiful symphony of a piece. It's glorious.
Get them all harmonizing together, right? Exactly. To continue the musical theme.
I wrote one for a local university here. Like, I nested out each department, their contact information, their individual websites. One of my favorite projects to work on, because it was just, again, like Sudoku. Sudoku of nested properties.
I find that stuff so, like you said, so satisfying when you can get it all clicking together. And when you show it to somebody who's not familiar with that kind of stuff, like I assume you're reporting to this university and then being like, oh, that's all of the information in one neat little block, and you just run it through an example like the rich results test and be like, see, it's all there.
And the way it impacted the knowledge panel.
Yeah.
There's a first party citation that clearly interlinks every piece, documents it out, lays it out. No more guessing if you're going to send the person to the right department. Oh, they want this one? Here's the exact information.
That sounds very, very useful. And again, like when we're thinking about the advent of AI and LLMs and how much they cite and don't cite and all that kind of stuff, when you can get that right information in a knowledge panel, easily going to the right department, that can make a huge difference when it comes to even conversions and all that kind of stuff, right? I find
absolutely,
if you're talking to the wrong person, it can get incredibly frustrating, and you end up being like, "Oh no, sorry, yeah, you're the wrong department. Oh yeah, I don't know if they're available. They're in a different building. I'll have to try see if I can connect." And oh god, it's incredible. You're like affecting UX and conversions without even dealing with the UX and the conversion side of things, right? It's all part of the same pie.
Well, and I think we need, the only way that generative AI will be sustainable is to have a knowledge graph, to have a fact-based thing that interconnects known entities, their relationships to each other. You wouldn't buy a wine without a vintage. If someone's selling a car and you're like, hey, what kind of transmission does it have? And they're like, blue. You probably wouldn't buy that car. Like, there are pieces that we need to validate to understand this is a real and tangible object. We all got a little bit of scammed during the pandemic, of course. Everyone was online shopping, and scrupulous individuals saw their opportunity to go ahead and be jerks. If you did it, you're a jerk. I said what I said. But a knowledge graph is a way to go ahead and anchor. Otherwise, we have, a very yes and. Generative AI always wants to yes and you. It's 3 Furbies in a trench coat. We need something to anchor that.
I was explaining this to my wife yesterday because we were talking about she used ChatGPT for the first time a couple of weeks ago with the conversational interaction thing, because we could not find an answer for a particular mission on Dragon Age Veilguard, and my wife's playing through Dragon Age at the moment, and it was like, right, there is clearly a bug going on, and we're playing it. So we have 2 TVs in our living room. My wife is playing on Xbox. I'm playing it on PS5. We're trying not to spoil each other as we're doing different things. It is, couples gaming is the Chambers Ward household for sure. But I was like, I can't find this. I'm like, she basically look it up for me. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm an SEO. I should be able to know how to search for this, right? And I kept getting AI overviews and all this kind of stuff, and I could not get the right answer. I was like, fine, let's try ChatGPT. Let's talk to it. And it roughly gave me the right answer. It kind of gave me the right answer. And we were left with okay, so for gaming queries, for that, if you need an answer, do you just ask it that? And I said exactly what you just said there, Jamie. The problem is it always says yes. It will always give you an answer, whether it knows an answer or not, whether an answer exists or not. It'll be like, it's probably this thing, but it doesn't say probably. It says it is this thing, and there's that confidence, right, with that generated answer, where it's like, I don't think you know. I know that answer is not that, but I can kind of see where you're going, but that's not quite the answer.
Do you remember the Furby?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, cute little toy. It was like Ulu Melee, and it came with 60 parameters. Parameters are just matching patterns, right? So it came with 50 you already understood, and then it would learn from you. So if you joked about your Furby trying to kill you a lot, it'd be like, kill, yes. Very fun. We actually had a national security, congressional meeting over it. There was concerns because it could pick up and listen to things. So that little beastie knows 60 parameters. ChatGPT 3.5 knows 175 billion parameters. It's the same concept. Nothing it says is ever true. It's just statistically probable.
It's just
based on what it's
Furby on steroids.
Yeah. It is 3 Furbies in a trench coat. I said what I said.
That might be the best description of an LLM I've ever heard.
It knows who I am. And I don't feel great about that. I'm not a public figure. I am at best an antisocial influencer. Did not agree to this. But it's that whole thing of your tacit existence online now agrees for you to be part of this thing. And how can that be used? How can that be manipulated? Microsoft and I believe Johns Hopkins University just published a study that was this yes and mentality is going to be very dangerous for extremist views. Jess Peck has a really lovely video on why you should use ChatGPT as search engine.
The best video essay of 2024 right there. It's so good. I was
Jess is a gift.
Yeah, seriously. I was like, Jess, you need to give up whatever you're doing and just commit to video essays for the rest of life. This is magical. I adored that. I watched it on my commute on the bus, just trying not to laugh out loud, surrounded by normies, essentially.
And that's an ability and a gift. So if you're in tech, one of the best things you can do is be able to communicate these complex ideas in a way that makes someone laugh.
Exactly.
Is approachable.
Exactly. That's a whole skill in and of itself. Absolutely. I got that's kind of part of the mission of this podcast, right? Is to take super complex stuff and hopefully entertain you guys and give you a few laughs along, especially if you know all the D&D reference Jamie and I are making over the last 40 minutes. If you don't, go and look them up.
This guy's self.
Exactly.
ChatGPT did know that I play D&D, though. I was kind of amused with that.
I feel like that's kind of unavoidable for you, mate. That is like, when I think of you, I think of obviously the blue hair. Obviously, that's like signature Jamie vibes.
Like, I could hide like 3 boxes, 5 boxes, 6 boxes of dye later. I could hide from everyone.
I remember when Billie Jean had changed her hair late last year, and I was like, oh my God, I felt like I don't know, I'm not necessarily face blind, but I felt like I go by hair color first to find people, especially in like conference rooms and stuff like that, right? My wife has very ginger hair, very like bright ginger hair naturally. So I'm always like, oh, if I'm scanning in a supermarket, I know how to find my wife. That's nice and easy. Like, oh, I'll find the blue hair, there's Jamie, like that kind of thing. Like, oh,
At Brian, I kind of become a meeting point.
Exactly.
And this last time I went was the first time another person there had hair like mine. And my friend messages me. They're like, I was running across the room to tackle hug you, and at the last minute realized it wasn't you.
That's a real last minute redirection.
There was a bee.
Exactly. And I guess the last thing, kind of wrapping things up about the Web Almanac, there is millions more things to talk about, by the way, folks. But I know we do have a limited time. We could be here for hours.
70 pages. There's depth in here. The data set is available for anyone to go ahead and look at. Go be curious.
Absolutely. The last thing I want to dig into is something I think a lot of people have been talking about. Core Web Vitals, that lovely 3-letter abbreviation. Like you mentioned LCP and CLS earlier. I know INP, I credited and shouted you out for the brilliant piece you did talking and introducing INP and highlighting all of that stuff. The really interesting side of things when it comes to how we're kind of understanding how things are changing, right? And I think there has been a positive shift. Yay! It was more sites, less bad, I think was the summary.
More sites, less bad. Which was great because we actually had to change the metrics this year. So interactivity previously was just based on the first interaction. It didn't work so great in SPAs. There were a couple places that were a little bit janky. So now we've changed that to be interaction next paint. So I tapped a thing. How long did it take for the page to paint something that showed a response to my interaction? Pretty great metric. Open source community has been working and evolving it for a while now. When it came out, the number of SPA-based sites that went from passing to poor was, you could hear the thud. It was wild. But we also saw them immediately correct. Immediately go, okay, how do we fix this? How do we change this? When Core Vitals came out in 2020, 20% of sites passed. I don't know if you remember the good old bad times with interstitials just everywhere and rage clicks aplenty. But we've moved to 58% passing on desktop, which is phenomenal. I think it's 49 on mobile. So the web is getting better, and it benefits every user, every device, every medium, every channel it comes through. They get to have an experience that works with our newfound way of interaction. You've got about, what is it? I think 8 seconds to go ahead and retain maybe 4 to 8, to retain a user on your page, because a notification is going to go off. Something is going to try and demand their attention elsewhere. So how do you keep them moving and doing the thing that you brought them there for? Well, you have a page that lets them do it. I'm a big fan of it. If you're a smaller site, again, it probably doesn't matter as much to you. When you're a large net scale, it makes a big difference. Just also as a human, could you make your websites less bad? That would be great. Please, thank you. Love you.
If that's not the perfect way to wrap things up, I don't know what is. Make sites better. And if you folks, you do want to get into specifically the Core Web Vitals, there's an entire chapter that is performance, let alone the
performance chapter
the
is
SEO stuff.
Great.
It's
beautiful.
It's crazy. I was kind of
they look at subtypes. They look at common issues. They're using the Crux data set. They're using Lighthouse. They're really diving into what are the most prolific problems. Where are we seeing them? And once we have that data, people come together and realize, hey, we've all got the same problem. Ooh, there's a way to solve that.
Exactly. I think for me going in, I didn't quite realize, again, when I first saw the one from 2 years ago, 2022, I didn't quite realize, like, oh, there's the SEO chapter. By the way, there's like 25 other chapters as well. Just get digging. If you're nerds like me and Jamie, get stuck in. There's plenty of stuff. I will leave links for various chapters and the whole thing if you do want to dig around.
Security chapter, fascinating.
Oh, I haven't looked at the security chapter yet. I was checking out e-commerce yesterday. I haven't looked at CMS yesterday as well, because we're doing a lot of e-commerce here at Candour at the moment. So I was like, interesting. I want to dig around in that and have a look. And I was chatting with one of my other account leads who was working on a lot of our e-commerce sites. Like, what the hell? That is interesting. Anyway, I know we should probably wrap things up. We have barely scratched the surface, but I hugely appreciate you finally joining me on the show. I'm sorry it took so long.
I'm just delighted to hang out with you again, my friend. Hopefully
Absolutely.
we'll see each other again soon. 2025 is going to be a fantastic year, or we'll make it be one.
Exactly.
We have the power.
Yes. We will use our robots to do that, or something like that.
Robot armies.
Summon the robot armies, exactly. Well, if people do want to follow what you're up to, Jamie, what you're doing with your newsletter, what you're doing with your website, all the talks and stuff that you're doing, the Web Almanac, all that kind of stuff, where's the best place to follow you around the world that we call the internet?
There's the most professional nerding on LinkedIn. But if you want more of the human stuff and a lot more cat pictures, I'm over on Blue Sky at notarobot.com. Same as my domain. There aren't dashes in between the words, by the by.
Nice and easy. There we go. Exactly. Well, thank you once again, Jamie, for joining me. It's an absolute pleasure. We should definitely catch up more often. Hopefully we'll see each other at a conference in the future and have you back on again. Maybe we do make this an annual thing of like the Web Almanac recap every year, and we'll have a lovely.
That's brilliant.
It's a good excuse for a catch up.
Initiative.
Right? There we go. Exactly. Awesome. Well, I will definitely see you in the future. Hopefully we'll be back for a future episode as well.
Thank you so much. Everyone have a wonderful day. I appreciate you gifting me your time. Let's go, team.
And that wraps up this week's episode. Thank you so much for watching or listening. If you're joining us for the first time in 2025, hello, welcome, Happy New Year. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're an old school listener all the way through 2024 and beyond, welcome back. We didn't even take a break. You wouldn't even noticed. But I am actually recording this at the end of 2024, just a little preview. And I've got some amazing guests coming up over the next few weeks. Mark and I, of course, will be back for our regular catch-ups in the more cozy setting on the other side of the Candour office. And I have Tamara Novitovic talking all about the value of backlinks in 2025. I've got some other cool guests coming up as well. I'm not even going to tell you. I'm just going to tease it. I've got some very interesting topics. We're going to be talking about how PPC and SEO relate to each other in 2025. We'll be talking all about content. Oh, surprise, surprise. We're talking about content, and specifically content that converts, because I think that is where a lot of people can go wrong with a lot of content creation. And amazing guests, like I said, coming up over the next few weeks, and some new sponsors coming out throughout 2025 as well. We're also building up towards Search Norwich XL coming up in September. We will announce everything for that very soon as well, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week.